Right, today we're going to talk about twitch tuning. We're going to show you a little tool that you can use to do a twitch tune, and then we're going to talk about if doing twitch tuning alone is enough to really get a good tune and see the whole picture on your quadcopter. So let's get into it. So first, what do we mean by twitch tuning? Well, twitch tuning, just as you saw in that video, is just taking your quadcopter, and when you're doing any tuning, you have to induce step response. So that's making little twists and you know, twitching it forward, twitching it side to side. And anybody that's worth their salt in tuning will tell you that's what you need to do. It's just how far do you go with that? Some people just do the twitches. And auto tuning in firmwares in the past have done that. And it's like they would just do like these little twitchy wobbles. We're going to talk about a little bit of stuff, but then it comes to, well, how hard do you need to twist? Do you need to do big twitches, or just the little twitches are okay? And what about full rate flips and rolls? Like where do you need to do on, you know, how far do you need to go with it? And the other thing I want to put on everybody's radar is Brian White, the PID Toolbox guy, actually has a video, and I'll make a link to the upper right on that video so he can go through it all with you. It's how to set it up on your radio so that you can flip a little toggle on your radio here like this, and it will automatically start doing the twitch moves for you, like roll, pitch. He has it in roll and pitch. He doesn't have yaw. I think that would probably throw off some things if you had roll yaw go all at the same time. But it's roll and pitch, and it can get you pretty far just with that. Pretty cool little script. I do love the repeatability then that you can see with that as you make adjustments, since it's the exact same inputs. You don't have the human error factor, because the computer's your radio is going to send the exact same signal, and the quad's going to do the exact same thing. So as you change PID gains, you can actually see the results super clear. So that is very cool with it because it's repeatable. And the other factor is it's adjustable. So you can adjust how far it does twitches. Is it little bitty twitches, or is it big, huge twitches? I mean, you can put these little things right here up to 100%, and then it will do full rate. Good luck with that. Don't do that. But you can slowly adjust things if you want to do harder twitches or softer twitches. So it's a pretty cool script. Check it out. Check out that video again, upper right over here. Yeah, upper right. So let's show you what that looks like in action. And here I input all his script information and then went out for a flight. I did adjust, and you'll see if you go and watch his video, he sets the Y points at 50. I think that's 50%. I moved it up to 60. I did try 100 at one point, and that's crazy aggressive, so don't do that. But you could probably get away with 60, 65, maybe 70. I think it really matters on your rates. I think it's going to have a big impact on where your rates are and where you start to hit that super rate part of your curve, where you know, at that higher limit, it really goes into the full rate flipper roll, or how even your rates are. If you have more like racing rates that are a little bit more subtle, then you could probably get away with those higher percentages, 60, 70, things of that nature. So start low like he has it at 50 if you would implement it, and then you can bump those up if you desire, and which I would probably recommend it here as well. You'll see here in a little bit. And but yeah, with that, this is at 60, and let's see what she looks like. All right, so here's how we're going to use this script. So we're going to get out somewhere, and we're just going to leave in an acro, and then we can just hit the switch. And you can see what you're going to get here for all kinds of twitch moves. And again, if you're up high, you don't need to do an angle mode or any of that kind of stuff. You can just let it do its thing. I would caution not to do it too crazy long if you are if you're hot temperatures, because this will heat the motors up. Like if you just leave it on, since it is kind of easy just to leave it held like this. But you are doing all kinds of moves. One thing you do need to be cautious against is using it in angle mode, because you can see here, then your angle mode settings will, let me turn this down, will impact it. So if I put this in angle mode, now if I go and do my twitch move, see how it's very subtle? So just be cautious of that. If I had a stronger angle strength, that would be more aggressive. But if you just leave it in rate mode or acro mode, you don't have to deal with that added complication, and you can see what you get. And then what I would recommend is just doing some classic flips and rolls too with this, and you know, just to have those things. And then if you don't program in yaw, to just do some yaw move twitches to see how to adjust and evaluate that part of the tune as well. Now with that out of the way, looked pretty good. That is a tuned quad, of course. So let's see what the log files look like. So really, what's your goal? If you are going to be looking at logs, you can see what it looked like in, just the visual of that. But let's see what the actual logs were. We can get a little more finer fidelity on seeing exactly what the quadcopter is doing. So this is that flight, and it's pretty straightforward. You can see we have the roll axis, the pitch axis here. The yaw is strong the bottom. You can see our P gains and D gains, and actually I can go to trace, so I'm on trace template 0. And you can see I have iNav here for this one. And you can see my stick commands as a result of that input. This is where it's starting to, you can see right here, it's just doing those stick inputs. So it's not just isolating the roll and pitch. It's kind of, some are just the pitch. You can see that move right there. It's just the pitch. But some are a mix, like in here. It's kind of going diagonal in that scenario. So it's kind of randomized. The more you hold the switch up or whatever you got going on there, the more sampling data you're going to get. And you can see here, this is where I think I let go of the switch, I believe, right here, and that's why it did this. I'm not too positive. This might be it restarting, honestly. That could actually be the restart of the script. Nevertheless, that's what you get. You can see here. Again, a set point is what the quad is trying to go to, and then this gyro, you can see the raw noise behind it. So let's just look at the roll itself. This is the raw noise behind it right here. This is the raw signal, and then the filtered signal, and you can see how that's going to follow that gyro signal. What we're looking for here is that the input, if we're going up and then descending, that this signal follows on it. I do not have feed forward turned on in iNav, so that's why you see this delay between the two. You're always going to have somewhat of a delay, but having more feed forward would help with that. And we'll subscribe if you're interested in that, because we're going to get into this in a little bit, because this is super helpful for tuning out feed forward and seeing the results. But nevertheless, you can see that we're not having any undershoot, we're not having any overshoot, so it's going up to that value. So this is, if you really want to get technical, this is going up to 284 degrees per second, and this is bringing it up to 291. So very, very close to the exact number. You're not going to tell the difference. Technically it's a little bit overshoot, but really nothing there. And you can see that all the way through. And moreover, what I would always recommend is doing some full flips and rolls as well to see what that looks like with the tune here as well. And you can see those here. So this is getting full rate then, and I can turn the expo on and off. You can see here full rate. I'm not getting any overshooting here. So let's look at this. So if you take this data now and you go into PID Toolbox, which Brian White's tool, and it's a great tool, but I think sometimes, the step response tool is a piece of information, but I'm a big believer in just looking at the log data, like what we just showed there. And let's just look. So this is the result we get. So although our pitch and roll were pretty much perfect, you're still seeing this little bit of overshoot here. So I guess technically, like I said, it was going up to 290 instead of 284. Maybe that's what this is. I don't know, but it's real. I don't know. Like sometimes people want these lines to look perfect, and I don't. I think sometimes you might be perfecting the irrelevant by trying to get this even more perfecter. Looking at that log, we're good here. This does not need any further adjustment. So that's my take on that. That's my hot take on it. We're tracking the gyro pretty much perfectly. Let's look at what this will kind of look like a little different between this and maybe a higher P gain, and see what that kind of looks like. So looking at and comparing side by side, just taking the P gains here. So in this flight, in this log over here, I took the P gains up to 40 and 50, or 40 and 45. You can see here, this is the normal tune for this thing is 30 and 35. So I took them up by 10 points. That's a decent amount, right? It's not just a little bit. And let me go back over to here. So you can see kind of the results that this is our tune flight, and here we're showing that this one's a hover. The other one I was in a forward flight. These are just two hover tests, kind of visual line of sight. And you can see we're getting right up to the 284. So that actually in a hover, we're getting to that magic number, which is the exact thing that the set point is getting to here. And then on this one where I adjusted the PID gains up by the P gains up by 10 points higher, it's only getting up to 296. So it's a very subtle difference between these two things. Now, interestingly enough, in TID Toolbox, if I go into those two and I trim up and just show, so this is the twitches in forward flight, and this is the twitches at higher P gains. And what I did is trimmed out where I did the full rate flips and rolls. And you can see over here, I did the full rate flips and rolls, and I trimmed those out here as well. And then if I go into my step response tool there and see what she shows, so we're just getting the twitch moves. In fact, it does show that, in the first one here, which is the higher P gains one, right here, you can see higher P gains one's the first one. Forward flight is with the normal tune on it. So we just bump those P gains up. You can see how we're getting a slightly more overshoot here, and you can see the difference. So it does, kind of vet itself out with that technique, and you can kind of see like, hey, I got a little bit of overshoot. My thing is it's a lot more apparent if you then start to look at full rate flips and rolls. So let's look at that here in a second. So here, for example, if I do a full rate with the higher P gains, if I do a full rate flip or roll, I get this massive overshoot, and you can just, it's plain as day, right? And you can see that in there. You can see the overshoot up here, and you just don't get that over with the tune with the lower P gains. So I'm a big proponent of taking a look at the log and seeing what that looks like. You can see here, no overshooting whatsoever going into the move or out of the move. And yeah, same thing here, no overshooting. You don't get overshoot on everyone. So here I don't have an overshoot on that one. It just has to do with the variability of how fast I'm moving the sticks. Here I got overshoot up top, but not down at the bottom. Here, nothing. Here you have some overshoot coming into a different move there. So yeah, here's another one with an overshoot. So again, yeah, it just depends on how fast you're moving the sticks and what some of the dynamic flight conditions. But in this one here with your proper tune, you're just not going to get that overshoot no matter what. Here, if I'm moving the sticks quick enough, I will get that overshoot, and that's an indicator. Now in the step response tool, going back and just looking at that, looking at for the full flight and not trimming any of the data out, not trimming out these full rate flips and rolls. Yeah, you can see what that now looks like here. Again, just as before, the higher P1, you can see more of that overshoot here on the roll. We still have a little bit on the tuned out one, but I don't really have any overshoot that I'm seeing in the black box data. So it's, maybe there's a slight thing, and this is just even more, fine tune looked at that. But nevertheless, it just comparing the two things together, I'm a big proponent. If you're doing this, look at the log data. You can look at the step response tools in PID Toolbox, but looking at the log data really gives you the full picture, and making sure if you're doing the twitches, get the twitches fairly aggressive. Real subtle twitches aren't going to get you there. And I think that was the big downfall with auto tuning in quadcopters in the past. They were just these little micro twitches. I'm like, that's not enough. You need some decent twitches. So try to get those ramped up. Look at full rate flips and rolls. You can use the auto twitching to, see some subtle differences. The other thing as you're tuning, keep in mind that was a 10-point increase. So this thing where like, I'm going to bump up P by a point or 2 points, like you're not going to really see any adjustment or change. You need to be moving 5 to 10 points difference for P and D. D's varies. Beta flight D is a little less sensitive, or kind of the same as P. In iNav, D is a little bit more sensitive. So that you might want to do 2-3 points at a time for D and iNav. So there is some variability between firmwares in those recommendations, but nevertheless, it's not these 1 or 2 point changes that typically make a big difference. And a final point, if you're not using Blackbox or PID Toolbox to do your tuning, you're just not seeing that fidelity that you could be if you were using those tools. They're like a microscope. They let you see closer and more accurately what the quadcopter is doing. And let's just use this little example here for that. So I'm going to run this footage. This is the full flips and rolls with the higher P number. And let's run this through and see if you can see any issues with overshoot. Right? Did you catch that one right there? So the first bunch, there were none, but you can see it if you're really, really looking. Right there, that little bobble. So to me, when I use just looking at, doing it line of sight, no black box or anything like that, you have to look really close. Like you have to really be paying attention to see it. It is a slight little shudder for any of that overshoot that we're seeing. You can hear it if you're really listening closely too, because you can hear that at the end if it's more dramatic typically. But it is hard to hear and it is hard to see. It's one of those things like you basically are like, I think I see some overshoot. Maybe I'll adjust something. And then you end up adjusting something. You're like, well, did I see any overshoot? I'm not sure, because then there's variability in your stick inputs. That's where I just say, just use Blackbox, man. You don't have to think. You can see it. It's recorded right there. It definitely overshoot, or it definitely did not overshoot. There's not I think, I don't know, blah, 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 blah. It's, I know, you can see it. It's done. So the bottom line is, does Twitch tuning work? Absolutely. It's stepped inputs. The Brian White's tool, again, link up there, is going to be a great little tool for repeatability to make and see some when you're making some subtle changes. Once you put it into your radio, it's good to go. It should stay in there as long as your radio doesn't get wiped out. And is it good enough with the PID toolbox? Yeah, definitely. I'm a big proponent, again, to look at the Blackbox logs. You can use PID toolbox, but I would just not use PID toolbox alone. I really just look at the logs personally. But you can use both of those tools hand in hand. If you are doing it just line of sight or listening to it, that can be done. It's just, you really are leaning more on the full rate flips and rolls. You're not going to see it in any Twitch tunes, right? You're not going to, there's no, that overshoot, you're not going to hear or see. That doesn't work like that because it's not like snapping back. So the Twitch tuning, if you're doing it line of sight, doesn't help you at all. You're really relying on full rate flips and rolls at that point for tuning if you're not using Blackbox. And finally, we'll leave with this, that, man, it would be great if that Twitch procedure was just in the firmware. So the big thing that I think, and then you could add on the algorithms to adjust the gains. Auto tuning has not worked in any of the firmwares that have tried it very well. I think there's a couple factors that play into why. One is the twitches that it does are just not enough. That's probably the primary factor. The secondary factor is, once you have the gains in ratio to each other, P and D are kind of the simplest. I is a whole nother beast, that I to P ratio that you need to get. Then sliding all the gains up and all the gains down is another critical component to get to the best prop wash. So you can get all the gains balanced, but if they're all way too low, the quad's going to fly like garbage. So there's that part where it would just slide all the gains up. That, as far as I'm aware, that's never been in any of the algorithms to date. That said, it could be. I think it could be done. It's just the auto-tune algorithms that have been put in place to date didn't really take care of the whole scope. So, a little challenge to anybody out there. I don't have the chops to tune to code this stuff up. Love to work with somebody on it. But if anybody's interested in coding that kind of stuff up, and I'm sure there's a plethora of people that would be interested in working with you on the tuning basics, hit me up. I'll drop my contact information down below. With that all said, I hope this was helpful in looking at a new tool to use for tuning, how that would look in Blackbox, how it looks in PID Toolbox, and some of the ins and outs for what gains adjustments you'd be looking at, like bigger order of magnitude gain adjustments, and just answering the question, does Twitch tuning work? And the answer is yes, it does, with some caveats, I guess. But until the next one, thanks everybody. I hope this helped. I'll see you then.